afternoon. My name's Alan Gamble. I'm here to talk to you about the Australian box office charts for this weekend. Weekend 3 of 2025. So let's get into it. At number 1, still remaining the king, can't be beaten, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 comes in at number 1 with $2.1 million after 4 weeks. That is a movie that was released on Boxing Day and has been number 1 ever since. 4 weeks released, 4 weeks at number 1. Following on is Mufasa, the Lion King, at $1.9 million after 5 weeks, a drop of 19% for a total of $23.1 million. You can see the total of Sonic the Hedgehog just nudged over $25 million as well. At number 3, we have Paddington in Peru at $1.7 million after 3 weeks, a drop of 23% in week 3, with a total of $12.2 million. A new entry in number 4 with We Live in Time at $1.5 million for a total of just over $2 million. And then holding at number 5, after 8 weeks of release, Moana 2 with $1.1 million. Now, animated movies continue to dominate the Aussie box office, largely due to the school holidays continuing. Now, I'll be interested to see how that changes moving forward as the school holidays wrap up in the next week or two. So that could do a shift. It could drop off the box office significantly, but I would expect some of these animated features to drop down the order to make room for some of the more adult skewing movies. We Live in Time is the only new entry this week, and $1.5 million for that type of movie is not too bad, considering, it's a very heavy melodrama that's not really in awards contention. Like, I haven't heard We Live in Time. Maybe some loose performances for Garfield and Pugh, but not really any of the big awards going towards that movie. And before we move on to 6 through 10, why don't we take a quick look at the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise? For the Australian total domestic gross for those movies, we can see Sonic the Hedgehog, the original, brought in a total during its box office run of $16.1 million. Sonic the Hedgehog's 2 entire Australian box office run was a total of $25.1 million. And Sonic the Hedgehog 3, after just 4 weeks of release, is currently just over $25 million. So there's almost zero chance that it won't beat out Sonic the Hedgehog 2. In fact, it's still going quite strong. So there's a pretty impressive number. That's what you want as a franchise host. You want to see the numbers go up, sequel on sequel. And Sonic the Hedgehog is genuinely doing that quite well. And let's continue right on into 6 through 10. At number 6, we have Conclave after 2 weeks, dropping down to number 6, just over $1 million, dropping 29% for a total of $3.7 million. At number 7, we have Wicked hanging around for week number 9, dropping just another 38% for a current total of just over $46 million, bringing in another $834,000 this week. Nosferatu drops down to number 8 after 3 weeks of release, and drop of 39%, bringing in another $663,000 for a total of $6.5 million. Wolfman enters the chart probably a little bit lower than people were expecting, with a $587,000 opening weekend. And at number 10, Den of Thieves 2 Pantera at $535,000 after 2 weeks, dropping a fairly heavy 51% for a current total of $1.9 million. So the battle of vampires versus werewolves, vampires reign supreme this weekend, with Nosferatu dominating and holding over Wolfman as a new entry. I'd also make note that the 2 wide releases that I called out last week of Magic Beach and Amelia Perez did not even make the top 10 this weekend. We also have Monster Summer second week, dropped a fairly heavy 53% for weekend 2 and brought in another whopping $27,000 this weekend. And let's take a quick look at the rapidly changing top 10 of 2025. So this is all releases in 2025 and their box office. So this will obviously look a lot different towards the end of the year once all the big name movies have come out. But right now, this is how it looks. So in first place, in top spot, we have Paddington in Peru holding strong with its total of $12.2 million. Nosferatu continues to hold second spot for now at $6.5 million. Conclave holds third at $3.7 million. We Live in Time, a new entry, zooms straight to number 4 at just over $2 million. Den of Thieves 2 Pantera at number 5 with $1.9 million. Dropping down the chart to number 6. Now, a lot of these movies won't stay on this chart for very much longer once some of the bigger tentpole releases start to hit the market. But for now, we have Wolfman at number 6 with $587,000. Game Changer at $331,000 at number 7. Game Changer had one of the biggest drop-offs I've ever seen. It dropped 99% in its week 2, but it also lost the bulk of its screens as well. Now, this one I'm going to butcher. Sankranthiki Vastunam entered the chart at number 8 with $300,000. That is one that I don't feel bad mispronouncing because every reviewer that I've seen talk about it in English also struggled with the pronunciation of that one. Number 9, we have Magic Beach at just under $300,000, $299,000. And at number 10, wrapping up, we have Seed of the Sacred Fig at $159,000. And moving on to what's coming up this week in theatrical releases. January 23, yes, we get a couple of big awards buzzy movies for the Oscars. We finally get A Complete Unknown, and we finally get The Brutalist. I had the pleasure of catching The Brutalist several months ago at the Brisbane International Film Festival. Can't wait to see what the more wide consensus is, but happy to see that one finally get a release in Australia. Pretty intense movie, brilliant movie in my opinion. And then for those people that don't want to catch an awards movie, but instead want to see a Mel Gibson movie, that's right, he's doing it again, but this time he's directing Flight Risk with Mark Wahlberg. So that one will come out. I'm assuming it will do a little bit better than Monster Summer, but we shall see. Hitting limited release in Australia on January 23, we have Dominic and the Lady's Purse, which is an Indian movie about a detective who finds a lady's purse in his apartment and has to uncover the mystery of whose it is and where and what. That one has a little bit of buzz from the Indian market. We have Harbin, which is a Korean movie set in early 1900s when Korea was a Japanese colony and a group of rebels planned to assassinate the Japanese prime minister. That could be quite interesting, and that one might go on my radar. And then we have Senet Segoro Pitu, otherwise known as The Curse of the Seven Seas, which is an Indonesian paranormal horror movie. So if that's something that sounds like your jam, it looks very gory based on the trailer. So there's one for your radar if you can find it in your local limited release. And then lastly, we have upcoming TV and streaming. On January 22nd, we have Apple TV's Prime Target, about a maths student who uncovers a mystery and gets involved in something he shouldn't. Then on January 24th, we have Star Trek Section 31 on Paramount Plus, which is a Star Trek Discovery spin-off that I'm not super familiar with. I believe I stopped Star Trek Discovery after season 1. It's always been on my to finish off and rewatch list, but I've never gotten around to it. Too much other things to watch. And lastly, returning for season 2 on January 23 is season 2 of The Night Agent on Netflix. I was pretty meh on the first season, so it'll be I watch it if I get free time and there's nothing else to watch. Otherwise, it might sit there for a little while, because while I enjoyed season 1, I didn't love it. So that's all that's upcoming on the TV and streaming front for this week. Alright, and lastly, to touch on the Cinechums Weekly Movie Challenge as to what I watched last week. The challenge was 5, the number 5, anything and everything about the number 5. However I wanted to loosely connect it, that was up to me. So I ended up with 3 movies. First up was 1994's Speed with Keanu Reeves, where a bus has to remain above 50 miles per hour, otherwise it explodes. A quintessential 90s action flick. Then I watched The Truman Show from 1998 with Jim Carrey, where it's one of his first serious roles, where a man is monitored by 5,000 cameras. There was my link there. And lastly was 1987's The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Running Man, where he has to run a gauntlet of gladiator-type bosses in a dystopian future that is getting a remake this year by Edgar Wright. I'm very, very keen to see what that movie entails and ends up like. Now, looking forward into this week's Cinechums Movie Challenge, it is week 4, Best Supporting Challenge. So, any movie that has ever been nominated for either Best Supporting Actor or Best Supporting Actress categories of the Oscars, which is quite a few, especially if you go back to the historical. Now, I've watched a lot of the more recent ones, but a lot of the historical ones going back to the 70s, 60s, 50s, you have some genuine classic movies that I've never got around to seeing myself. So that's why I'm going to do that this week. On my shortlist, I have a few selected out. We'll see how we end up. But I've got a few things like Harvey or Midnight Cowboy, Lady Bird, Schindler's List. Casablanca is on my list. Yes, I've never actually seen Casablanca, which is kind of egregious as being a movie fan. But there's quite a few all-time classics that I've just never gotten around to seeing. And this challenge this week is a perfect example of why I love doing this challenge. It gives you that little bit of incentive, that little shove to watch something that's been on your watch list for a long time. And that is it for me this week. Tune in next week, where we'll have a bunch of new numbers to look at, a bunch of new challenges, a bunch of new things on the go. I'm also continuing to develop the back end stuff, because this is kind of new to me. So I'm still improving my workflows, improving my back end. I was doing audio video sync up tests last weekend. I'll be doing some lighting tests this weekend coming. I think I'm going to end up needing a softbox, a gridded softbox, which, while I have all the expensive lighting equipment that I might need due to my photography background, I don't have the right softboxes and stuff like that I need. So I am looking at grabbing one of those. Moving forward, we may have some video and talking head stuff as well, but this is all a new experiment, so stick around and we'll see what we can get into. Top 12 for 2024 is still on the cards, as well as some more new releases start hitting out. I may try and experiment and mess around with some review formats as well. But until then, tune in next week and I will see you all then. Thank you. Bye.